I want to make a quick point about the tank busting bosses in Naxx. Sapph and Mograine aside, there are 3 bosses that require defensive gear, and they're all different. These are Maexxna, Patchwerk, and Loatheb. Maexxna is about surviving web spray, a long stun on you and your healers. Stam and armor are the key for this, and avoidance stats are even worse than usual since you can't dodge, block, or parry while you're stunned. Defense is still of some value. The reduction in chance to be crit and increase in chance to be missed still function while you're stunned. The key mechanic on Patchwerk is Hateful Strike. This does massive damage in a single swing to an off-tank basically every GCD. Once you have the stam and armor to survive one of these, stacking avoidance becomes the best thing you can do as a hateful tank. This is because the fight comes down to healer mana once your tanks are able to take a hit. Avoidance is the best stat at making you cheaper to heal. Stam is at the other extreme, having almost no effect on how much mana per second you cost to stay alive, and other stats like armor are in between. Hateful cannot crit like most NPC abilities, so defense is somewhat less attractive than raw dodge and parry. Block value is insignificant as a hateful tank because the damage comes in massive single hits. Loatheb is entirely different and probably my favorite encounter in the game as a tank. Here it's all about damage taken per second, for which you want armor, defense, and surprisingly, block value. This is the only fight in the game where block value shines. Loatheb swings slowly enough that shield block can catch the vast majority of attacks, and the damage per swing is low enough that, near armor cap, you can block a crazy percentage of the incoming damage. Armor caps out at 75% mitigation, but block extends beyond this. I typically block 20% of Loatheb's damage per swing. That's the equivalent mitigation of several thousand armor.
See how much less damage he's taking, guys?
Crack,
It's
you're up. Cedar,
ridiculous. That's our main tank right there.
And that nearly doubles when I pop my block trinket. Defense and avoidance are very good as well. Stam contributes little, just breathing room so your healers don't panic and overheal. A few quick tips: you don't need to move for any of these fights, so I swapped to a second pair of boots without the run speed enchant. As Horde, use Grace of Air instead of Wind Fury on Patchwerk and Loatheb. These fights are not threat sensitive, and the extra 4% dodge and some armor is fantastic. As for Maexxna, make sure a hunter is giving you their nature resist aura during web spray. It can help reduce burst damage from poison shock, which she sometimes likes to cast twice per spray. Now on to itemization. Life-giving gem is almost a requirement on Maexxna, but kind of a joke on Loatheb. On Patchwerk, it's not horrible to use to survive the last 5%, and weirdly, gem and last stand behave as a kind of taunt as a hateful tank. You'll draw more hatefuls to yourself while you have the higher HP. You can use them situationally to draw hatefuls to yourself for a short time. Why would you want to do that? Maybe one of your off-tanks is squishy and won't survive the last 5%. Maybe they ran out of stone shield potions or are taking a long time to refresh their stone shield. Maybe you're using the dodge juju on yourself and you want to draw hits to yourself while that's active. Maybe you're cheaper to heal and your healers are almost Maybe you've popped shield wall and you want to draw hits to yourself during that duration. These are all edge cases for gem on Patchwerk, and personally I don't use it. I use Stylene's and Frostwolf Insignia for the 2% dodge. Diamond Flask can be worth using on Loatheb, but unless your flask set is really good or your kill time is really short, Stylene's will outperform it. Flask front loads its healing, so it becomes a dead slot by the time the dooms start going out, providing no benefit during the hard part of the fight. The block trinket I use on Loatheb is the Glyph of Deflection off Sapph, and I highly recommend it for this fight only. If you don't have the Sapph trinket or Abyss flask set, I'd recommend Stylene's and the AV Exalted trinket for Loatheb, not Life-Giving Gem. Belt is another interesting slot to talk about. For Maexxna, you want to use Dreadnought for its higher stam, armor, and defense. Meanwhile, for Patchwerk, you definitely want to use Royal Karaji for its avoidance. For Loatheb, the two are very comparable. I'd give a slight edge to Karaji, but this tips in Dreadnought's favor if equipping it unlocks an even slightly useful set bonus. For weapons, dual wield on pull on Maexxna for better threat and swap to shield before spray. Ideally, you want the Thunder Fury debuff on Maexxna during the entire spray, but you can swap to a meme defensive weapon just for spray. For example, Spine Shatter, Bloodlord's Defender, or Blessed Kiraji Warhammer. I don't know that this justifies an inventory slot, however. Gloves are similar to Belt. AQ gloves have more avoidance and threat, but Dreadnought has more stam and armor. Use Steadfast on Patchwerk for the dodge, Dreadnought on Loatheb for the armor, block value, and stam. Like the Belt, the Dreadnought will help you survive Web Spray better than its AQ alternative. However, since threat is more relevant on Maexxna than on Patchwerk and Loatheb, consider using Steadfast if you're fully world buffed. Last slot I want to talk about is neck. Cthulhu neck is what you want to wear in all cases. However, if you're like me and you don't have it, the remaining options are interesting. I took the Neff ring for threat set, so I don't have that neck either. For Maexxna, I use Kiraji Guardian for its stam, defense, threat, and a little armor. For Patchwerk, I use Medallion of Steadfast Might out of Molten Core for its higher avoidance. For Loatheb, I use Gluth's Collar for its block value and stam. The block alone doesn't make up for the loss of Medallion's avoidance, but I think the 11 stam more than makes up the difference. And for good measure, I use Oni Tooth Pendant on Mograine for the fire resistance.